The in White Rage, I go through these moments of where African Americans have achieved some semblance of their citizenship rights, and then look at the massive backlash in terms of policy. The election of Barack Obama to the presidency was a huge victory for Black America.
And two times.
Whew.
All of America, that is right.
Well, except not all of America, because there were large segments of America who thought they were looking at the apocalypse, who saw a Black man in the White House and thought the world as they knew it was over, particularly the Republicans. And let me explain why. Barack Obama's organizing ability brought in over 15 million new voters into American democracy. This is something we should be applauding. The Republicans looked at this and had a Scooby-Doo moment. Oh, Shaggy. Because what they saw in there, 2 million new African American voters, 2 million new Hispanic voters, 600,000 new Asian voters, and the growth in voters who made $15,000 a year or less was almost exponential. Those are the folks you say you want invested in democracy. Because when people are invested in the nation, they become part of the solution. They help build. They make the nation stronger. They bring that kind of diversity of ideas and commitments to the fore. Instead, what happened was that the Republicans looked at this, and they had been working on the language of voter fraud for a while, because they had to figure out, how do we shut this thing down? Because the party had moved so far to the right. So far to the right. And I would say it's because they brought the toxin of the Southern strategy. They brought that racism into the party. They wooed it into the party in 1968. And the more they brought it in, the more right-wing that party became, till you don't even, as I said, Lord, I miss my Republicans. So they couldn't develop policies that then spoke to the poor, to Hispanics, to African Americans, to Asian Americans. They couldn't speak to the broader group of Americans. They spoke to a strata of overwhelmingly, it's like 92% of the Republican Party is white. So they spoke to a strata of America. And so what they did is they began to figure out how to shut it down. But they couldn't just go boom, because that would violate the 15th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act. And so what they did was to say, we need to ensure the integrity of the ballot box. White rage works beautifully because it cloaks its devious methods in the language of democracy. It swaddles it in the flag. It swaddles it in common sense language. So you get voter IDs. We need to ensure the integrity of the ballot box. So we need to make sure that you are who you are when you vote. That sounds like, well, yeah, I need a ID to get a book out of a library. How hard can that be? I can see that. But then it's how they implement it. Let's take Alabama. So Alabama first says, okay, so you need a voter ID. And then what Alabama does in the Black Belt counties, and those are the counties that have a large, it's either equal or more African Americans in that county than there are whites. They shut down the Department of Motor Vehicles in all of the Black Belt counties. And what they said, now it sounded for fiscal responsibility. With keeping these places open all the time is just draining the treasury, and we have to be fiscally responsible. Now, I've got to say there were two areas where they didn't shut them down. At Selma and Montgomery. Right? But they figured they could shut them down in all of the other ones and nobody would notice. So, and these were the counties in Alabama that voted overwhelmingly for Barack Obama. We have voter ID laws. Now, let me back up. There was a huge hue and cry afterwards. And so what Governor Bentley did was he said, fine, I'll open them. And people are like, okay, great. But now they're open 1 day a month. So begin to think about what your access looks like to your right to vote. So the pattern is you create an obstacle, and then you create an obstacle to the obstacle. We had millions of American citizens who were denied their right to vote in the 2016 election based on voter suppression, the backlash to the presidency of Barack Obama.